In the heart of a land revered by billions, a seismic shift occurred in 1948, setting the stage for a drama that continues to unfold on the world stage. The British, after decades of dominion, relinquished their grip on Palestine, a territory laden with historical weight and spiritual significance, leaving a vacuum of power. But this was no ordinary land handover. It was the land of Israel, a nation steeped in biblical prophecy. As the Union Jack was lowered, an undercurrent of apprehension filled the air. The neighboring Arab nations, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Jordan, viewed the nascent Jewish state as an existential threat, unwilling to accept the establishment of a nation they deemed illegitimate. The arrival of Jewish people from every corner of the globe, staking their claim and defying the escalating hostility, pushed the region to the brink. The inevitable eruption of war saw missiles streaking across the sky, the landscape scarred by conflict, and the future hanging precariously in the balance. Yet, against all odds, something extraordinary occurred, an event that defied predictions and reshaped the course of history. Fast forward to the present day, and the Israeli-Arab conflict has mutated into a complex and perilous geopolitical chess game, with Iran emerging as a major player, wielding significant influence. The escalating tensions between Israel and Iran, fueled by Iran's nuclear ambitions, and its backing of militant factions throughout the region, have created an increasingly unstable environment. Is this merely a power struggle, a game of political maneuvering? Or is there a deeper, more profound spiritual conflict unfolding before our very eyes? What prophetic insights does the Bible offer? Could these contemporary clashes be integral to a divine plan carefully orchestrated across millennia? Before we delve into these compelling prophecies, consider the possibility that history itself is resonating with a higher purpose. Get ready to journey through the scriptures and unveil the enigmatic role of Israel in God's grand design, a tapestry woven across centuries and whispering of a destiny yet to be realized. Ready to explore? Let's begin. Israel in Bible prophecy, what the scriptures truly reveal. Against all rational expectations, after enduring nearly 2,000 years of exile marked by unspeakable persecution, the Jewish people persevered and returned to their ancestral homeland, establishing the modern state of Israel. This was more than a political triumph or a military victory. It was a watershed moment, a fulfillment of ancient promises. From the ashes of the Holocaust and the collapse of empires, a nation arose again in the very land where prophets of old once walked and spoke. Though wars continued unabated after 1948, so too did the resilience of the Jewish people. Israel endured, surrounded, contested, yet steadfastly standing. But here is where the narrative transcends the political and enters the realm of the prophetic. Long before diplomats negotiated borders, before the whispers of Zionist ideals turned into tangible action, there were those who knew this return would happen, not because of their keen insight into military strategy or political opportunity, but because they discerned it within the scriptures. Imagine encountering a prophecy that proclaimed the return of an entire people, scattered across continents, to a tiny sliver of land, and daring to believe it. This is precisely what some did. For within the pages of the book of Ezekiel lay a vision that defied historical precedent and shattered the limits of human expectation. Ezekiel foretold of a people dispersed among the nations, scattered throughout the lands, Ezekiel 36-19, only to be gathered again from all corners of the earth. and return to their own land. Ezekiel 36-24. This return would be accompanied by the revitalization of the land. Deserts would bloom, cities would be rebuilt, and the Jewish people would once again call the hills of Judea and the plains of Galilee their home. Does this sound like an impossible dream? What would you have thought if you were living in the 19th century, observing the Jewish people as minorities in foreign lands? Would you have dared to believe such a prophecy? This miraculous return, however, is but the opening act of a much grander prophecy, and to stop here is to miss the dramatic events yet to unfold. While chapters 36 and 37 of Ezekiel depict the regathering and restoration of Israel, chapter 38 introduces a chilling prediction: a war, a massive assault, an alliance of nations poised to strike the reborn Israel in the days to come. What is truly astounding is not merely the prediction itself, but the fact that these very nations are now dominating headlines, forging alliances, arming themselves, and voicing threats against the state of Israel, even today. The prophecy doesn't speak of possibilities, it speaks of inevitabilities. Have you ever considered that you might be living in the very generation Ezekiel foresaw? That these ancient words could be unfolding right before your eyes? What would you do if you realized you were standing at the threshold of a prophetic moment inscribed over 2,500 years ago? Ezekiel's prophecy extends even further. He foretold that upon their return, the Jewish people would not only resettle the land, but would also flourish within it. He writes that they would become so prosperous, so wealthy, that it would incite envy among nations. You will come to seize spoil and carry off plunder, the prophecy declares, to turn your hand against the resettled ruins and the people gathered from the nations, who are acquiring cattle and goods, who live at the center of the land. Ezekiel 38:12. It is as if this ancient scroll foresaw modern Israel's thriving economy, its groundbreaking innovations, and its agricultural transformation of barren lands. But this prophecy is not yet complete. There is an even more astonishing revelation awaiting us beyond this war, a detail so extraordinary, so ahead of its time, that it would have seemed utterly bizarre in Ezekiel's era. Yet today, it eerily mirrors the potential consequences of modern warfare. Are you prepared to discover what transpires next? Or perhaps even more significantly, what if you are not merely a reader of prophecy, but a witness to its unfolding? And if this is the case, what role might you be playing in a story that God began writing long before your birth, perhaps even influencing the outcome? Let's open the ancient scroll together and examine the words of the prophet Ezekiel, step by step. This is not mere poetry or distant history. It may be a divine blueprint of our future. As we begin in chapter 38:1, we read, "Now the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog." This phrase might initially seem enigmatic, but let us proceed carefully and decipher its meaning, for what it reveals may shake the very foundations of our understanding. Gog is not a personal name. It is a title, signifying a powerful ruler, much like the terms king, czar, or president. And Magog? This refers to a vast territory located to the north of Israel, mentioned in Genesis 10 as one of the descendants of Japheth. Ancient scholars typically placed Magog's territory in the far north, beyond the Black Sea, corresponding to modern-day Russia. Thus, Ezekiel, writing in the 6th century BC, was alluding to a future leader from the land we now know as the Russian Empire. And here is where the prophecy takes a chilling turn. If this prophecy were to unfold in our time, who is the leader of that northern empire? Vladimir Putin. To be clear, this is not a definitive declaration that Putin is Gog. But the components of this prophetic puzzle are aligning in a way that is difficult to dismiss. If the war of Ezekiel 38 were to commence today, he would undeniably fit the description of the leader of Magog. But what ultimately becomes of Gog, this powerful leader of the north? Verse 4 delivers a startling declaration from God. I will turn you around, put hooks into your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army. Hooks in the jaws. Imagine the visual, a powerful beast being dragged against its will into battle. The Hebrew imagery here is not subtle. It evokes a forceful, divine pull, a leader who does not initiate the war but is compelled to participate. What could possibly draw a modern superpower into a war it did not desire? Have you observed Russia's increasing involvement in the Middle East in recent years? Over the past decade, Russia has become deeply embedded in the geopolitical dynamics surrounding Israel. From its military bases in Syria to its arms deals and burgeoning alliance with Iran, Russia has been gradually circling the focal point of biblical prophecy. Could these recent actions be the initial tugs of those prophetic hooks? And here is a question that may resonate personally with you. If you were Ezekiel, receiving this vision thousands of years ago, would you believe that such distant empires would ever concern themselves with a small strip of land in the Middle East? And yet, today, the eyes of the world are perpetually fixated on Israel. Why is this so? Why does this tiny nation constantly attract the attention of the world's most formidable armies? Russia and Iran, standing side by side, not only on the battlefield of diplomacy, but, according to prophecy, in a future coalition that turns its gaze southward toward Jerusalem. And it becomes even more compelling when you realize that Iran is explicitly named in Ezekiel 38, referred to by its ancient name, Persia. The connection is unmistakable. It is clearly delineated in the verses that follow. Is it possible that you are living in the very era Ezekiel foresaw? Are we witnessing the setup to a divine confrontation prophesied millennia ago? And if this war is imminent, what does it signify for the remainder of Ezekiel's prophecy? What will become of Israel? What role might you be playing in a narrative that God commenced long before your existence? The questions are numerous, but the answers are drawing ever closer. Let us continue our exploration. And now we arrive at one of the most electrifying junctures in Ezekiel's prophecy: the identification of specific nations, the very nations that will unite with Gog of Magog in a future assault against Israel. And heading this list is none other than Iran. Yes, Iran is present in the Bible, albeit under its ancient designation, Persia. This was the name of the land for centuries until 1935, when it formally adopted the name we recognize today. Therefore, when you encounter Persia in Ezekiel 38:5, understand that it is not a metaphorical symbol. It is a direct reference to modern-day Iran. How could a prophecy spoken nearly 3 millennia ago so accurately anticipate a modern alliance that would have appeared utterly inconceivable to the ancient world? Recall that when Ezekiel penned these words, the Jewish people were still in exile, living as captives in Babylon. Persia and Magog were not allies, they were at war. Two rival empires locked in conflict in a vastly different world. So ask yourself, how could Ezekiel have foreseen that in the distant future, these very lands, once bitter enemies, would transform into strategic partners with a common objective. Today, we witness this answer unfolding in real time. Iran, once a mighty empire of kings and scrolls, now plays a pivotal role in the modern Middle Eastern crisis. It is no secret that Iran has provided funding and support to violent anti-Israel groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah, funneling weapons, money, and ideological backing to those who vow to eradicate Israel from the map. Even more alarming, it has launched missiles of its own. This is not speculation. It is a matter of historical record and current events. But the most unsettling aspect is that Iran and Russia are no longer distant observers of each other. They have signed peace treaties, engaged in weapons trading, and recently even initiated joint military training exercises. Joint military drills, shared strategic planning, coordinated resource allocation. These are not the actions of casual allies. These are calculated preparations. How could Ezekiel have possibly predicted this friendship, this dark alliance between ancient Persia and Magog, at a time when neither nation could have envisioned such a partnership? Is it not unsettling to realize that a scroll penned in captivity thousands of years ago now reflects your evening headlines? Could it be that you are standing in the shadow of a prophecy poised to erupt into fulfillment? If the Bible accurately named these nations in advance, what else did it reveal? What transpires next? And here is something that may send shivers down your spine. The Bible not only identifies who will attack Israel, but also specifies where and how. The ensuing verses depict the invasion strategy, its geographical scope, and its ultimate outcome with such precision and modernity that it seems as though they were extracted directly from tomorrow's newspaper. Can you sense the mounting tension, the undeniable overlap between scripture and reality? Do not look away now, for the next segment may mark the moment when prophecy intersects with your present. Now, the prophecy guides us further down the list of nations, and next comes a name that may sound familiar, but can be somewhat misleading if taken at face value. In Ezekiel 38:5, the Bible mentions Ethiopia, but when we revert to the original Hebrew text, we discover that the word used is actually Cush. This distinction is crucial because ancient Cush was not located within the territory of modern-day Ethiopia, as we often assume, but rather in the region we now know as Sudan, situated just south of Egypt. This seemingly minor detail is of paramount importance. Why? Because Sudan, over the years, has consistently maintained a firm stance against Israel, aligning itself with many of Israel's adversaries. Historically, it has supported anti-Israel rhetoric and policies, and for decades, it remained on the list of nations hostile to the Jewish state. But in recent years, the situation has become even more alarming. You see, Sudan is not merely opposed to Israel in words. It is now acting strategically in ways that chillingly mirror Ezekiel's vision. In a move that seems ripped from a modern military thriller, Sudan has begun forging deeper ties with both Iran and Russia. This is not a minor political adjustment. It is a prophetic alignment, military cooperation, economic agreements, shared ideologies, and yes, even the granting of strategic military advantages. Would you believe that Sudan has now permitted Russia to construct a naval base on its soil? A Russian presence along the Red Sea coast, within striking distance of Israel's southern regions. is not simply a geopolitical development. In light of Ezekiel's prophecy, it becomes a prophetic tremor, edging the timeline closer to fulfillment. Imagine reading this prophecy thousands of years ago and attempting to envision Sudan, a relatively obscure nation today, linking arms with two global powers to one day move against Israel. Would that have seemed ludicrous then? And yet here we stand. The puzzle pieces are shifting and locking into place with remarkable speed. Is this mere coincidence, or is it something more profound? Could you be witnessing the gradual unfolding of a war foretold by a prophet in exile, whose words continue to reverberate across centuries of history? And more importantly, what does this mean for the rest of us? If Sudan, Iran, and Russia are all aligning into formation, who is next? And what does the Bible say happens when they ultimately act? Hold tight, because the names that follow will only deepen the mystery and the sense of urgency, and the list continues to grow. As Ezekiel's vision unfolds, another ancient name emerges from the pages. Put, which scholars widely agree refers to modern-day Libya. This North African nation, long plagued by civil war and political instability, may not initially appear as a significant player on the world stage. But behind the scenes, a revealing development is occurring, one that aligns precisely with the subsequent detail in Ezekiel's prophecy. Libya has commenced cooperation with Russia in ways that would have seemed improbable not long ago. Quietly and without significant media attention, Libya has allowed Russian forces to deploy advanced air defense systems within its territory. This is not merely a gesture of goodwill. It represents military alignment, preparation, and the fulfillment of prophecy with astonishing clarity. Can you discern the emerging pattern? Each of the nations named in Ezekiel 38, Persia, Iran, Cush, Sudan, and now Put, Libya, have not only voiced animosity toward Israel, but are actively linking themselves with Russia, the Gog of the North. Could this be the coalition the prophet envisioned? Are we living in the prelude to a war described nearly 2,600 years ago? This is beyond the realm of fiction. No contemporary screenwriter could have conceived of a scenario in which ancient tribal names, scattered throughout the Old Testament, would one day correspond so precisely to real-world nations, forming real-world alliances. And yet, here we are. Libya, a country ravaged by conflict, is suddenly granting military access to the very power Ezekiel identifies as leading this prophetic charge. What would you do if you were Ezekiel, receiving this vision of nations far removed from Israel's borders, forming a unified front? Would you believe it? Would your heart tremble? Or would you, like many today, dismiss it as symbolic or irrelevant? But observe the map, read the headlines, listen to the military analysts. These are not vague parallels. They are stunning fulfillments. And here is the question that may strike closer to home. If so much of this prophecy is already aligning before our very eyes, how much time remains before it reaches its climax? Because the prophecy is not yet concluded. Another nation remains, and its identity may surprise you even further. Before we examine how this prophesied battle will unfold, there is one final nation mentioned in Ezekiel's list, perhaps the most unexpected of them all. This nation is referred to in Scripture by two ancient names, Gomer and the house of Togarmah. These titles may sound unfamiliar, but historians and biblical scholars have traced them with remarkable clarity. They point to a nation that holds a deeply strategic and symbolic place in today's global landscape. Turkey, Yes, Turkey, modern, powerful, and increasingly vocal in its opposition to the State of Israel, is the fifth nation that will align with Russia in this future assault. And what is even more chilling is how clearly Turkey has already begun to fulfill this role in recent times. The rhetoric emanating from Turkish leadership has become increasingly aggressive. Just last year, the president of Turkey garnered international attention with his scathing criticism of Israel, declaring, "You are an occupier. You are an organized gang." That is not diplomacy. It is a declaration of hostility. But the story does not end with words. Turkey has not only voiced its opposition, it has also joined forces with two of the key nations already named in Ezekiel's prophecy, Russia and Iran. These three countries, once unlikely collaborators, have become surprising partners in military strategy. And where have they focused much of their attention? On none other than Syria, a country directly bordering Israel to the north. Allow that to sink in. These three nations, Turkey, Iran, and Russia, have actively worked together in recent years to shape the future of Syria's government. Their coordinated involvement in the Syrian civil war has afforded them military access, strategic influence, and proximity to one of the most sensitive regions in the Middle East. What could be more prophetically precise than that? Now here is where it becomes even more compelling. Two powerful reasons why this moment is impossible to ignore. First, you might already be thinking it. Ezekiel's prophecy described an unlikely alliance, a coalition of nations from different regions and cultures that would somehow converge for one coordinated attack. And now, in our own time, we witness these very nations not only aligning, but actively collaborating on military matters. Is it not remarkable that three of them, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, are already forming a tight-knit strategic unit? But there is more. Examine the geography closely, consult a map, and trace your finger from Turkey to Syria, then down into Israel. The Bible states that the attack will target the mountains of Israel, Ezekiel 38:8. That is not merely a poetic phrase. So, as we've journeyed through the ancient words of Ezekiel, it's become strikingly clear that what once seemed like distant prophecy might actually be unfolding right before our eyes. The return of Israel, the alliances forming, the tensions rising, it all paints a powerful picture. The main message here isn't one of fear, but of awareness, of understanding the times and the potential role we play in this grand, unfolding narrative. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. What resonated with you the most? Do you have any questions or insights to share? Please leave a comment below. Let's get the conversation started. And if you found this exploration thought-provoking and want to delve deeper into similar topics, be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss out on any future videos as we continue to unravel these incredible prophecies together. Thanks for watching, and may you be blessed with understanding and wisdom as you seek His truth.